Testing 1, 2. All right, I think we are live. All right. Hi, guys. Donnie Rouse here, founder of Rouse Coffee Company, host of the podcast One Life with Donnie Rouse, and creator of the One Life Blueprint. Have you ever wanted to live a life full of passion? Have you ever wanted to wake up feeling excited about your day, feeling fulfilled at what was ahead of you? Meaning you wake up and you know the direction of life that you're headed. And as a result of doing things that fulfill you, every day is filled with its own fulfillment. But have you also felt stuck? Have you ever felt like you got lost in comparison, where you were always comparing yourself to other people, and as a result, you just never felt enough? Have you ever felt overwhelmed because you are stretched out in a million different directions? And as a result of feeling that stretch out, you don't have the time to focus on the things that are most important to you. Have you ever felt unfulfilled? Looking at the life that you're living and saying, you know what? There has to be more than this. If you have felt this, don't worry, I have felt this too. And this is my story of struggle in triumph. So I started my career in finance. In college, I majored in finance. I went to work in investment banking and then later on in corporate finance. The entire time while I was in there, I knew it wasn't the right fit for me, but I had my girlfriend and my father who had their own expectations, their own vision for my life. So as a result, I felt like there was a conflict there. I felt like there was pressure to go a certain path when my heart wanted me to pursue coffee. My heart wanted me to travel and just experience more from life. Those days in the corporate world were pretty gruesome for me. I felt like I had searched the entire World Wide Web and I was bored, and I asked myself, is this all there is to life? It was at this moment where I gave my notice. I quit, booked a 3-month trip to Italy, and decided to pursue my passion for coffee. As you can imagine, this didn't really go over well with my father or my girlfriend because they had their own vision for my life. They wanted me to get a good job, buy a house, get married, start having kids, game over. But that wasn't what was in my heart. After I left my job, I broke up with my girlfriend, or I should say she broke up with me. And then I was on this path. And that path in what I call the road to paradise was a very, very difficult path because on one hand, I'm pursuing something that I'm extremely passionate about. But then on the other hand, the people who love and the people whom I love, I wasn't getting the support. So I felt like I was just fighting an uphill battle. And on top of that, when I was choosing to pursue my passions, I had all my friends who were all around me making like $70K and up. And then there I was probably making close to like 30 because I was literally working in cafes, getting minimum wage, in most cases getting paid less than some of the high school kids who were there because they had seniority over me. I ended up dating another girl, falling in love. But in that relationship, I realized that our values were different. I realized that we wanted different things for our life. When I realized this, I said, you know what? This is not going to work. And I broke it off. Immediately after doing that, I fell into the lowest state that I had ever been in my life, where for the first 3 days, I doubted everything, the existence of God, a reason to live, really. But then after 3 days, I was like, okay, I believe in there's the higher entity, higher power. I'm good. As long as I have that foundation, then I could make it. I could move on. But it really shined a magnifying glass or a light because I was like, all right, well, yes, I'm pursuing my passion for coffee, but How am I not staying true to the life that I want to live? Again, this was the reason why we had broken up. I broke up with her in the first place because our values and the things we wanted were matching, but I wasn't holding my end of the bargain up for myself. So I stepped out with my business in 2010, and that was also when I really, really amped up my travels and started literally going out to all different countries and all the different continents. But that wasn't enough to leave me fulfilled. I still needed answers. I was still in that low state. So I started going to seminars. I started reading books. I became fascinated with the idea of creating and living your one life. During this time when I started my business, I was also working a lot in the restaurant industry. And I would always ask people who I felt like had more wisdom and knowledge than me, say, hey, well, listen, if you could go back, like, what advice would you give your younger self, or mainly, what advice would you give me? And they were like, do the things that matter to you. Travel, live abroad, do whatever your heart desires. Because as you get older, responsibility creeps in, and all of a sudden now the things that you could have done and you want to do now no longer you can do them, but it may become more challenging. So I was looking for answers. I ended up coming across the concept you can create your life any way you want. So I had started attending different seminars, workshops, participating in different courses. But all of the courses, the syntax was off, right? It was like it would give me a process, but the process didn't make sense logically. Or I would go through the process and I was doing it alone. So there was no accountability, there was no support. But I ended up eventually creating my own system, the One Life Blueprint, which is what I'm going to share with you here. And as a result of all of this journey, now I travel the world. I've traveled to 51 countries by the time you're watching this video here. I have my own podcast. I have a successful coffee company. My beverage, the Cold Roman. And my goal here is to inspire other people to live their one life. Now, why live your one life? Like, what is the significance behind this message? What is the significance behind creating the framework in which to create the life, right? To manage and say, and have a kind of like a visual dashboard to say, okay, well, these are all the things I want. This is where I'm heading. The reason I did that was because I had this belief that there's no reason to put off life for some later time. When I had quit my corporate job, my father was always telling me, hey, go to work, save your money. And then once you've saved, then go open the cafe, do whatever it is you want to do. But that didn't make sense to me. I'm like, well, why would I work for 30 years or however many years, 40 years, only to start living my life at the end of that time? Like, what if I'm not even around, right? Not a single day is guaranteed. What if I don't have the health? So this mindset and this philosophy for living was, let me do the things now that matter to me, while also planning for the future, but let me do the things that matter to me, because that is the juice of life. So what I'm going to share with you here is the framework for what I call the One Life Blueprint. And it's literally a step-by-step guide in terms of how you would walk through the entire process to create this vision for your life. And that vision is a map. Right? The best time to have a map is before you enter the woods. So what this does here is it gives you a way of saying, okay, well, where am I going? And what decisions are going to align me on that path? Because guess what happens? When you aren't aligned, or when you're not looking at where you're going, you start to go off in all different directions. Now all of a sudden you feel spread thin. Now all of a sudden you lose that passion. And whether you know it or not, you are following a vision. There's always something pulling you, right? Your successes and your failures, You're following a vision. So it's super important to know where you are putting that focus. It's super important to know what it is you're moving towards. So the framework, the first framework step is to get clear about what are the important areas of your life that you need to manage and measure. I'll give you some of them, and then could be a custom list. So you can use this list and you can use it as just kind of a framework, and you can come up with your own list. But they are these: health, career, finance, spirituality, love, relationships, life experiences, contribution, intellectual, emotional, and character. After you've listed down the list of categories, again, these are the categories of your life that you want to manage. Why do you put the categories of your life you want to manage? Because these are the things, in order to have a fulfilling life, in order to have a well-rounded life, you want to know, right? So this way, when things come at you, you could you could put them in compartments. Go, okay, this goes here, this goes there. And then the stuff that is not important, you just push to the side. So it keeps you extremely focused and also makes sure that nothing gets left out. So once we have the categories, what is the next step? The next step is we measure, where are we in this category? So if you list out all the categories I just mentioned and say, all right, well, where are you on a scale from 1 to 10? Like if you are a 1, why are you at a 1, right? It's important to know why you are where you are. And then you list that there. So that's just understanding where we are. Now we get into the actual One Life blueprint, or the framework. And I will give you a mnemonic device to remember this. A graceful bunny swings gracefully in air. So what that means is, and I'll go through every single one of those. The A is for accounting. So in accounting, what we do is, or what you want to do is, you want to understand, like, all right, well, what are the beliefs that are guiding my day-to-day decisions? What are the actions that I take day to day that are giving me this reality? And also, where am I spending my time? Right? Time is the one thing that each of us has equal of. You always hear people, oh, I don't have time. But again, we're all given equal time. It's how we spend the time. Sometimes you could find someone who says they don't have time, but then when you look at their phone, there's 3 hours on Instagram, right? You multiply that times 7. Now you have 21 hours that you spend on social media that could be spent building the life of your dreams. Secondly, your vision. So think of your vision as the big picture. The vision is the thing that you are moving towards. So it's super important when you're doing that to make it compelling, to add, I say a picture, but think of it as more of like a film, right? A picture's worth 1,000 words, a film's worth 1,000,000. This is what you're moving towards, and you want to make sure that it's far enough out in the future where there's a gap that you have to close in order to get there. But as a result of getting there, it completely transforms who you are. The second one is your purpose. Like, what is your big why? Like, why is, if you're saying, okay, I want $1 million, your vision is to be a millionaire. Why is that important? This is the emotional center, like the heart of what it is that you want. So when you think of the reasons why, 2 things that you are very important to focus on is, 1, how you benefit, right? Like, what are the reasons why you want it? And secondly, who else benefits? That is even more important, because like the more people who benefit from it, the more likely you are to move forward. And it's important to always seek more clarity and to make this why compelling, because when you have a strong enough why, you could overcome any how. The next thing we look at are the beliefs. The beliefs, we could look at in the accounting section, as I had mentioned above, we talk about beliefs, and that accounting is something you will literally do day. It's almost like a journal. But the beliefs are, what are the beliefs of the person that you are becoming? Right? We don't want to take actions based on who we are, right? Because our beliefs are what are dictating our actions. So what you want to do is you want to take actions based on the identity of the person who has achieved your vision. From there, once you know the beliefs that person has to have, now all of a sudden when you put that filter on, Now, all of a sudden, the actions, it changes everything. It changes the entire game because now you're seeing from someone who's actually done it versus someone who can't even put themselves in that pair of shoes. So from the beliefs, now we start to look at strategy. What are the strategies that are going to get you to this vision? And this is, it's important here when we're talking about strategy, a lot of people you don't have to overcomplicate strategy, right? Sometimes it is the simplest things that'll give you the biggest results, especially in health. So when you're looking at strategy, usually there's 3 areas. I mean, you're going to do a dump of actions that you can take in order to move towards that goal. But roughly, you want to look at, well, what are 3 things that I need to focus on that will move me or get me the results I want or get me there faster? So as you do, you list down all these strategies. One most very critical thing is the who. So it's important to know who can you contact to give you advice, to guide you on this journey towards that vision, right? Because sometimes you know the answers, but you're not doing it, right? Common sense isn't always common practice, but sometimes you don't know. In which case, maybe just getting information or reading up and getting some knowledge is that next step, is the strategic step. So you capture that down. The next one is G, goals. So we have our strategy, right? But what are the goals? It's not enough to say, okay, well, I'm going to work towards this vision. And yes, the vision may be very compelling, but what are some of the ways that we could start living this now? What are some of the ways we could start feeling that emotion in life? And this comes in the form of goals, right? So think of someone who wants to travel the world. They may have like this vision for doing, traveling all 100, and I don't even know how many countries there are now. I feel like they're different lists. Say 195 countries. That is their vision. But looking at that vision, it can kind of seem overwhelming. Plus, you haven't even traveled to one, right? So what are you going to do? Well, one of the goals may be, all right, let me book that first trip this year because I know that'll get excited. And let me book a trip where maybe I'm doing it with a tour, right? I have aspirations of solo travel, but I just want to get out there and get comfortable. So you book it with a tour group and you hit 5 countries. Guess what? Now, all of a sudden, we move to the next part, identity. So your goal gave you the identity of a world traveler. And so these two work hand in hand. So you want a goal that is going to help you propel you towards that vision, but also give you an identity. When we get to identity, right, the next section, identity, you want to imagine this as like a hat, right? You have the hat of, your fitness, the hat of your emotional life, the hat of your intellectual life. If you want to break it down even further, we can go into like your career, right? Or your business. If you're an entrepreneur, you may have a hat that it says, okay, accounting, sales, strategic thinking. Each one of these hats, aka identities, allows you to think differently, to put yourself in the mind of that role. And from that role, all of a sudden now you get new insights. You make new decisions because you're thinking from a different perspective. And the next section is action. Right? So how do we now take everything that we've just created and how do we start to bring it into fruition? How do we make it real? You must take action. If you do all of this work and you don't take any kind of action, your life is going to stay the same. It's not going to improve. It's going to get worse, right? Because everything in life is either growing or dying. And action is where I feel most people will get hung up because, it's scary to imagine your life as a box. When you take new action, it's like jumping over the border of that box, and that's scary. But you don't have to make this giant leap, right? You can literally tip your toe over that border, come back. And then as you start to get more comfortable, maybe you step over, and now all of a sudden that box has expanded slightly. So there's different ways of going about the action. You can do small steps, which is, in most cases, are the only way to start. Or you can do what I call committed action. Committed actions are those actions that commit you to the result. And once you've made that action, or once you've made that decision, there is no turning back. A decision I have done with this is whenever I book a travel, for example, is I always book it non-refundable. So once I've spent the money on the airline ticket, it might be a $1,200 ticket, non-refundable, guess what? I'm not getting the money back. So if there is any apprehension, any fear around going on the trip, tough. It's either I don't go and I lose that money, or I go and I have the experience of my life, as it always happens. And so that is the framework. And this is, I want to address, so if you know the framework, what are the things that get up? You probably are worried about several things. And I'm going to go over some of those things that you might be worried about. One is, I don't know what I want. You know, if you're telling yourself that you don't know what you want, I want you to stop it there, because what you're doing is you're using a negative incantation to psych your mind out into believing that you don't know what you want. Right? Do you want to drink swamp water? No, I don't. Okay, well, you know what you don't want to drink. And it's similar to life, like to all the areas of your categories. You have a general idea of what you want, but because you keep telling yourself over and over that you don't know, what you're doing is you're creating a scotoma where you can't see what's right in front of you. Every experience in your life is giving you some sort of contrast to say, I like this, I don't like that. And the whole process of understanding what we want is the process of living. But the more decisions you make, the more clear you know what it is you want, because now you have contrast. Another thing that might come up is you might not think you have the time to start. You don't have the time to plan. As I mentioned earlier, we all are given the same amount of time. And it's a matter of how you spend your time. Granted, some people have more responsibilities, more demands on their life than other people. But I challenge you, there are ways around that, around finding time. You could do something where maybe you're compounding, where maybe you're driving the kids to school, but you're listening to this audio, and so you're able to absorb it in. And while you're doing your day-to-day tasks. So there's always a way. Or maybe it's just waking up. You might have to get 10 minutes less sleep, depending how much sleep you get. If you're only getting a few hours, then I don't recommend this. But maybe you need to wake up a little earlier. Anything you need to do in order to give yourself the time to put some conscious thought into your life. And this one is, it won't work. This is another belief system that gets in the way. So when people say it won't work, what they're really saying is, one, they're afraid of doing something and it won't work. Two, they're afraid of doing it and not getting the results, aka meaning they invested the time and they're not going to get it. Or they're afraid of, like, if they do get the result, it might be more painful than where they are now. So as a result, they just say it won't work. But what I want you to know is that it already is. And when I say it already is, meaning this entire process we're talking about, the idea or the concept of creating your life, your vision, your purpose, beliefs, this is already at play in your life. The only thing is that some people do it consciously, others are doing it unconsciously. And if you're not doing it consciously, who is making those decisions? It is the culture scape. It is your family, friends, the expectations. It's all the unconscious things that we have been programmed, right? What we're doing here is we're breaking that program by taking the reins to our life and saying, this is the direction we are going. The other thing is that when you say it won't work, what you're really saying is, I'm not willing to try something new. And as a result, you're keeping yourself stuck. So I want you, if that's something that you find yourself saying, say, you know what, something has to work. Change what you say. If you're saying it won't work, just say something has to work. Something will work. Something more empowering that it'll get you to look for those answers to move your life forward. And then the lastly is, I don't have the support. This one is important because sometimes the people who love you the most who have the best intentions for you may be the ones who poo poo all over your dreams. And that's okay, right? Because they can't see what you can see. This was a big one for me when I had quit the corporate world and I was pursuing coffee. I wanted nothing but to make my father proud. I wanted to hear those words, Donnie, I am proud of you. But those words never came. So it was a process, and I realized that there were things that I could tell some people that I couldn't tell others, even the ones that loved me and were my family. But I had to share certain things with people who I know would pick me up, who would cheer me on, who would say, hey, follow your heart. I believe in you. And as a result, it saves you from those critical or those harmful jabs from the people who love you. And really, they do love you because they're just trying to keep you safe. And they are looking at your life from their perspective, from their lens. So you have to, again, choose who you tell your desires to. And also just realize that everyone is on their own path. This is your path that you are creating. So I have a challenge. And this challenge is just to prove to you what is possible. I want you to make a live video and to tell me the following. I want you to, 1, tell me what it is that you want in this life. Secondly, tell me why you want it. And third, tell me how it's going to feel once you've obtained it. What we're doing here is we're really concreting. We're getting you to commit to say, this is what I'm committed to, and I will not settle for anything less. When you've done that, I want you to do this on Instagram. Do it live. Tag me at DonnieRouse.com, DonnyRaus.com. If you don't have Instagram, totally fine. You can send me the link at live@DonnyRaus.com. live@DonnyRaus.com. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope it gave you a lot of value, and just to start thinking of this framework and applying it to every area of your life. If you enjoyed this video, please share it with 5 people and hit that like button. If you have any questions, please put them in the comment section. That is it for now. Remember, you only get one life. Live fully, live passionately, live now. God bless, and I will see you soon.